Hi, how you doing? It is day 7. Day 7? What day is it? Wait, is it day 7? Hold on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, it's day 7. It's day 7 today. No, it was day 7 yesterday. Yesterday was day 7, which means today is day 8. I can count. That's counting. It's day 8. We've been in lockdown 8 days. I guess I'll give you an update. Basically, our lockdown for all of New Zealand has been extended by 4 days. Auckland has a little bit longer, so we should get out on the 27th. To be fair, all of the days are kind of blurring into the same day. I'm doing the same thing almost every day and seeing the same thing. So in terms of receiving information on the lockdown, it's all kind of blurring into one thing. But basically, Auckland will stay in lockdown till the 31st, and the rest of New Zealand, so myself, are in till the 27th. Ideally. This of course all hinges on whether or not we actually manage to trace all of the cases in time. If we don't start seeing a downward trend in case discovery, then it's likely we'll stay in lockdown for a little bit longer. Better safe than sorry. What has happened in the last few days though, is a local politician, Chris Hipkins, made a slip up on TV. And I think it's a brilliant example of the New Zealand humour. He very unfortunately mixed up the terms spread your wings and stretch your legs when talking about New Zealanders getting exercise during lockdown. What he ended up saying was, spread your legs.
Look, it is a challenge in higher density areas for people to get outside and to spread their legs when they are when they're surrounded by other people. And so in some cases, it might be more sensible for them to drive a short distance to get to somewhere where they can be further away from other people. I shall go and stretch my legs. I'm sure you'll all have fun with me later.
This has obviously led to a lot of memes over the last few days, and basically just New Zealanders going out and filming themselves spreading their legs in public.
I'm very happy to comment on that. People can exercise. If you're in a high density area and it's not safe to exercise around where you are, you can exercise in a way that's socially distanced. Look, it is a challenge in higher density areas for people to get outside and to spread their legs, get outside and to spread their legs, when they're surrounded by other people. Spread their legs, get outside and to spread their legs, wear a mask when they
Things like that remind me why I love this country so much. On top of that, Jacinda Ardern did something that I empathize with so much. During a press conference this week, she held up a piece of paper with a picture of New Zealand on it. And on the picture of New Zealand were a range of dots. She then explained that each one of those dots represents a location of interest, so a place where somebody who might be infected was. Meaning those were places where we were trying to trace people that may have come into contact with COVID-19. The reason why I empathize with this moment is because I totally understand why she did it. Because I mean, all of the information that was on that piece of paper is also readily available on the site, but it's in list form, it's written down. And one thing I've come to realize when doing this and speaking on TikTok or any social platform is that if you really want to get some information across, sometimes you have to treat your audience like children, especially when it comes to speaking to people that are anti-vax or anti-mask, just generally anti-logic. You really do need to break things down. And so I think, in my own opinion, I think Jacinda has gotten to a point where she's sick of being asked dumb questions. And so she's just gone, fuck it, I'm gonna draw a picture and draw some dots on it. And she basically said, as long as we have these dots in these places, then we can't open up these places. So when there's dots, bad. When there's no dots, good. And you know what? She actually has been getting less dumb questions after that. People need diagrams, and I think especially because one thing that she keeps getting asked is, when is international travel going to open back up again? Which might not seem like a dumb question initially, but it really is, because it depends completely on the rest of the world. And the New Zealand Prime Minister is just the New Zealand Prime Minister. A lot of people here seem to be complaining that they want to travel again, or they want to go overseas, or for some reason they're blaming our government for not being able to open the borders safely. without understanding that in terms of opening the borders and traveling internationally, it's not whether or not we've gotten rid of COVID, because we have. It's whether or not the countries that people would be traveling from have gotten rid of COVID. International travel depends on how well the rest of the world handles this. In New Zealand, we had it pretty good. And we still do. We got rid of it. And the amount that we have of it now is fairly small, comparatively. Which means that other countries are safe to receive us, but we aren't safe to receive them. And it's a really simple concept that a lot of New Zealanders can't seem to grasp. But yeah, that's why I think she decided, you know what, I'm just going to teach you guys like a kindergarten teacher. Here's a picture of New Zealand. Here are some dots. Dots are bad, no dots are good. Choice. Now, today for me personally, it is the last day that I can enter a specific funding grant that I'm going for. I mentioned in an earlier video that I wrote, directed, and starred in a horror series set on Instagram. And over the past year, myself and my writing partner have been putting together a concept for season 2. And we also realized that in order to make it, we might actually need some money this time. So for the past 4 months, we've been working on a proposal, and today is the deadline. So for my video today, I thought I'd give a quick update on where New Zealand is, and I'll show you some of the comments that I didn't put in my last anti-vax video. I wasn't initially going to put them in a video, but I think now's an important time to show people because as of yesterday, the FDA has approved the Pfizer vaccine. And the non-approval from the FDA has been the main and strongest argument that the anti-vax community has had this entire time. So in the next few weeks or so, it's going to be really interesting to see how many of those anti-vaxxers that were messaging me saying that the vaccine doesn't have FDA approval will now update their views and get the vaccine. My prediction is none of them. Anyway, here are some of their comments. Blom for All says, first, in the open, you don't need any masks, which we've already talked about. This is untrue. Second, virus dies when it comes in contact with the sun. This information you could find out for yourself. Now, all of that is incorrect, but it's a really important comment because it's a great example of how a message can be distorted. Now, if you imagine in school, we used to play this game called Whispers where we would line up all facing one way and the person at the front would turn to the second person and give them an action and a word. And that person would have to do that all the way down the line, passing it along till it gets to the end. At the end of the game, the last person and the first person show each other what messages they had. Always the message is different, and it shows that as you pass one message along, the more people that it goes through, the more it can be distorted. And it's the people in the line that show the least amount of care for specifics that change the message the most. Now this person has said, first, in the open, you don't need any masks. Now we know this is incorrect because we've already talked about it. If I'm outside in an open space with plenty of room between me and other people and there's no chance of me breathing in anybody else's spittle, then yes, I do not need a mask. But if I am outside within a group of people, large crowd of people, nobody wearing masks, then in that point, I probably would need a mask. To broadly say outside without any context as to what kind of situation outside is to change the meaning of the information. So again, specifics, very important. But also, this is the big one. Second, virus dies when it comes in contact with the sun. This is wrong, but I know the source material, and so I'll give it to you. Here's the thing. This person has said that the virus dies when it comes in contact with the sun. So people imagine the virus, you can imagine the virus here, and there's a ray of sunlight, and I put the virus into the sunlight and it dies instantly. Bang, it dies when it comes into contact, because that's what it means. When I come in contact with something and something happens, people imagine something instantaneous beginning to happen. That is incorrect, but the source material comes from the fact that germs, over here, new example, germs die under UV light. And UV light is contained in sunlight. So if I put a pan of germs into a ray of sunlight which contains UV light, eventually those germs will die, but I mean eventually. Research shows that COVID can last on surfaces for up to 2 hours. So, to guarantee that you're perfectly safe outside, in terms of just the sunlight, not spittle or breathing, you would have to be able to guarantee that any surface that was in the sun would have to remain in the sun for at least 2 hours, and nobody can touch that surface after somebody else within that 2 hours. So in terms of the case that I was speaking about on TikTok when it's people going to the beach, there were people sitting on benches. That's fine so long as nobody else sits on that bench after the first person for at least 2 hours. If you can guarantee all of those variants, then sure, the statement works. But to make a broad statement and say that COVID dies in sunlight changes the information so much that it's no longer true and is now dangerous. We cannot be flippant with information sharing. It must be correct, which is why it's super important to get your information from the source, not from unqualified people on Facebook that heard a thing one time or read the title of an article. Get your information from scientists and medical professionals. They're extremely accessible. This next one was a bit different. Ryan Simmons said, "If only everyone was a woke liberal soy boy like you, eh?" Laughing face, laughing face. It's so unfortunate that these people are unable to or just don't care about the company they keep. So I went to this person's page, Ryan Simmons, and he says he's a Kiwi, a conservative, and a defender of the faith. So he's Christian. And if you go into his videos, they're all Christian preaching videos. But here's the thing that I didn't actually understand at the time. I didn't know what soy boy was. I've never heard of that. I guessed it was American. So I Googled it and I found out that soy boy is a term born out of the alt-right community. For those of you who don't know, alt-right are dressed up white nationalists. They're Nazi apologists, and they're basically just modern, less punk neo-Nazis. So this person in New Zealand is using a term from the white nationalist community, an extremely racist community, to describe me here in New Zealand. Woke liberal is something I get a lot, and I don't really care anymore, but it's one of those things that's really sad because it's a blatant Americanism, and I have no idea why right-wing conservatives in New Zealand have adopted US culture so much. It doesn't even make sense here. Liberals, conservatives, these aren't even words that we used in this country prior to Donald Trump. Prior to the 4 years of Donald Trump's term where all of our news was about American politics, we didn't speak this way. But we do now, and it's horrible. Woke liberal soy boy. And this guy says he's a defender of faith. It's so blind to me because I'm not Christian, but I was raised in a faith that observed all religions. And so I do know the story of Jesus, and I know many of the stories in the Bible, and I know the Bible very well. And at no point would I ever imagine Jesus himself, real or not real, approving of anybody using white nationalist neo-Nazi rhetoric when talking to strangers on the internet. But again, it's that strange grouping of conservatives, Christians, neo-Nazis, and people on the right wing. They all seem to keep the same company without seeing a problem in that. And I don't get why. Look, I have beliefs. I do. And I have ideas of how I think society should be and how people should conduct themselves, okay? I'm aware that I have beliefs that change. People change their beliefs as they grow older, as they learn new things. But never at any point have I looked across from the table when sharing a similar belief to a group of people and seen bad people at the table. Everything that I've ever believed in has been about compassion and care and consideration and love. And when you really truly believe in those things, the people who support those messages are good people. They will be good people. But in New Zealand, what I don't understand is how people can support parties like the ACT Party or National Party, which are our right-wing parties, when the evidence is really clear that the other supporters of those parties are misogynists, are sexists, are racists. All it takes is a very quick search into any National Party Facebook article, and you'll find supporters of that party all saying racist, misogynistic, sexist things. And I can't imagine ever looking at a group of people that believe in the same things as me and seeing such horrible rhetoric and being okay with it. At what point do you question your own beliefs? If not at the point when you realize that racists believe the same things? When do people check themselves, if not when they realize that they're keeping the company of the worst kinds of people? Unless they themselves are the worst kinds of people. I don't get it. The rest of these comments are more of the same. This person says, Vicky1000003 says, you believe what you want to believe, let the smart people do what has to be done. This again is just a dumb comment. No, I'm sorry, when it comes to something like statistics, science, maths, when it comes to actual numbers taken from groups of people affected by something that is life-threatening, you don't get to believe what you want to believe. There is facts, and that's it. The idea that you get to choose what is true is so selfish. Triggered 90s says, shut up, melt. I don't even know what that means, but for some reason it makes me want a toasted sandwich, so I'm probably going to do that after this. Spicy Banger, who, surprise surprise, has a Donald Trump picture as his profile photo, says, nobody cares about this 0.0546% death rate, in quote marks, pandemic. Incorrect. Lots of people care about it, but also your stats are incorrect. The mortality rate for just the original COVID-19 is between 3 and 4%. The mortality rate that you've quoted of 0.0546% is actually a lot closer to the mortality rate of influenza, which is around the 0.01%. But no, COVID-19 is between 3 and 4%, and we don't have enough information for Delta, which is most likely either the same or worse, considering that it's more contagious. Just a guy says, if nothing happens, then you have just insulted everybody unfairly. Lol, talk about COVID privilege. Now mask wearers have COVID, you reckon? What? COVID privilege? I don't understand. Do I have privilege because I don't have COVID, or do I have privilege because I don't want others to have COVID? Now mask wearers have COVID, you reckon? I didn't say that. I said people should wear masks to avoid getting COVID. I didn't say if you have a mask, you have COVID. What the fuck is that? Nick West 75 says, but feel free to gather at the supermarket, touch all the food, hang out in the fridge, all touch that enter button. Okay, 1. Feel free to gather at the supermarket. Nobody's gathering at the supermarket. There's a line that's social distance and only a certain amount of people are let in at a time. That's all over New Zealand. 2. Touch all the food. People are generally only buying what they touch and only touching what they buy. That's been the same since the beginning. 3. Hang out in the fridge. What giant fridge are people hanging out in? There is a freezer for alcohol and beer. But most supermarkets have shut down that freezer, so you can only get alcohol and beer from liquor stores. And nobody's hanging out in those either because they also have a capacity number, of which only a certain amount of people are allowed in at a certain time. Nobody's grouping there. 4, all touch that enter button. There is not a supermarket in New Zealand that has an enter button. We have had automatic doors since the 70s. There's no enter button. Honestly, anti-vaxxers just say shit. They just make up situations to be right, and then they just believe them themselves. Milnero Podi again says, if you want to make sure they're all safe, referring to somebody else's kids, then go stand at the borders and make sure no one comes into New Zealand, my bro. This is another example of people taking American rhetoric. The idea of people standing at the borders to stop immigrants from entering the country is something that we hear mostly from the US and nowhere else. Because the US has borders, of which people can walk across them. New Zealand is made of 600 fucking islands. Standing at the border is just some dude walking to the beach and watching planes fly over him. It doesn't even make sense. But it's a really good example of how the right wing in New Zealand have adopted US rhetorics and traits. Stand at the border. That's just going to the beach. That's a lot, huh? I know. I'm slowly getting used to this whole thing of being a sort of lightning rod for right-wing conservatives to release their tensions. But yeah, look, it's a really nice day today, and after I finish this application, I'm going to try and get out there and enjoy it. So for now, this is day 8. Here's to hopefully me getting my application accepted. So wish me luck. Ciao.